Hi everyone, welcome to Fully Book Chats. Today we will chat with an international best-selling YA author. Introducing our host for today, Reina Bambao is a book reviewer for the Fully Booked First Look Club who loves to read history and historical fiction, fantasy and witchcraft, and of course, YA. A professional tarot reader, Instagram creator, and soon-to-be author. Let's all welcome Reina.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. It's my pleasure to introduce our guest for today's Fully Booked Chats. So, she used to hide books under the bathroom sink and sneak in there to read after bedtime. Her parents pretended not to know. This helped when she decided to write a dinosaur time travel novel at the tender age of 9, but sadly, that book was not published. She currently lives in NYC and spends her free time trying to figure out what kind of puppy to adopt. So this is Kat Cho, the international best-selling author of Wicked Fox and now Vicious Spirits. So welcome, Miss Kat.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Hi, how have you been doing?
Pretty good. Can't complain. Very excited to be here talking with you.
Oh my God. Okay, I'm just gonna take a second to admit to everyone watching this that it was one of the highlights of my review career as a reviewer at Fully Booked to read both your novels, and I'm so glad to be doing this interview with you today. So
Thank you.
yeah, so you were saying earlier that um, you were worried that people weren't reading your book, and you loved seeing social media proof of it. So yeah, totally. It's out there. I see it a lot on Instagram. So
Oh,
let's jump in. And I guess my first question is very timely because I wanted to ask, what's it been like releasing and promoting Dokkaebi in the midst of this whole COVID pandemic thing?
it's definitely been very surreal. I have really mixed feelings because I feel so lucky that I was able to debut in a year where we weren't in lockdown and everything last year. So I feel very grateful for that because I do have a lot of friends who are debuting this year, and I don't know if people really know how long it takes for a book to kind of become published, but a lot of people have been writing and trying to get their books published for years and years and years before our debut books come out. So if you can imagine, like, 8, 10, 12 years of a dream culminating and having to debut during a pandemic, it's not always the most ideal situation. So I do feel very lucky that I was able to meet readers last year when Wicked Fox came out. So then when this year, when Dokkaebi Vicious Spirits came out, I kind of, counted my blessings. And I also realized that there's so many opportunities for us to meet our readers through things like this, through like virtual talks. And it's actually been kind of an unforeseen positive thing that has come out of all of this. I think that the community has really rallied behind authors, has really picked up our books and champions them, and comes to these talks. And I always get so excited to be able to talk to people from completely different countries, which was not something that we ever made normal before, but now it is more normal because we've embraced the virtual format. So I do think that there's some positives to it. I mean, there's always, the fact that, there's so much stress from the world in general. Like, it's not the nicest time to be trying to be creative, but I always feel so boosted. Like we were talking before, like whenever I see something on Instagram or someone liking my book, like it means the world to me. And I really love it that you guys like it enough to be talking about it on social media. So I really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because I know that last year you did a bunch of like appearances at cons and uh, physical book tours. So it's been different this year, doing it all online, but also I guess it was bigger in a sense that you got to do this interview with us. Like I get to see you and everything. Because last year, I know I did an interview with you as well, but it was just on paper. So yeah, those kinds of things are super interesting.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so talking about writing your baby for like 10, 12 years. So what is it about you or your upbringing or your personality that made you the kind of author who would write a series like Wicked Fox?
Oh gosh. That's a pretty deep question. Like I have to kind of go back digging into my childhood maybe, but um I think the thing to start off with is that I came from a household that really did encourage reading of all types. I felt really lucky with that. I mean, my parents in some ways were a little bit the traditional Asian parents in that they really encouraged me to go into like math and science. Um, but they were
As
also
Asians, we feel you.
right? But that was more like, oh, we think that would be a much more stable profession. But that didn't mean they were ever against me exploring things creatively as a kid. And so I feel really lucky because they got me my first library card when I was too young to even sign my signature. So like my mom signed my signature on it because she just wanted me to be able to check out any book I wanted. I just remember going to that library. It was so small, but like it had like a really big children's section, and I would sit on the floor and I would like read the books and play with the toys. And then another thing that was always the case was that if our dad ever brought us to a bookstore, we knew he would let us buy something, which was a huge deal for a kid. Like your parent lets you buy something at the store.
That's
And
true.
so I feel like he might have tricked us because he made it be like going to the bookstore is fun now because you know you'll get to buy something. But you know, it eventually it did become genuinely a joy for us because we really did embrace reading, and I loved reading. And my older sister was like, she had so many like series that she loved and then she handed down to me. So I feel like I was just always encouraged to explore these creative worlds. And that was really good for me because like when like I would read a book that I didn't like love how it ended, I would just imagine a different ending for it. And I got really good at doing that. And I kind of imagined that that was a little bit the beginning of me trying to come up with stories because I would be like, no, that's not how it should end. I'll tell you how it ends.
You wrote a lot of
And
fix-it fic then.
yeah. And then my sister, you know, helped me write like my own like sequels to books when like the book was over and I was like, I don't want it to be over. She would help me write sequels to them. I would like illustrate it and she would write out, you know, the narrative. So yeah, I had a lot of encouragement from my family to like be creative. And then I would say that the other half of it is my Korean identity, which, you know, I didn't have a great grasp of when I was first growing up because I grew up mainly in Central Florida, which there isn't a very big Korean or even Asian community in Central Florida. Not like there is in other states in the United States. So my grasp of my Korean identity was really solely based on my family. Like anything Korean I associated with my family because my family was the only source of that I had. And it felt very personal to me. It felt very private. I didn't talk about it a lot, you know, in school because other kids just didn't understand it the same way that I did. So when I got to college, though, I went to college in New England, and the New England area in the United States has a lot of Asian people. And for the first time, I was meeting kids who like understood all the things that like I went through. Like, you know, it's automatic that you take off your shoes if you go into anyone's house. Like, like you know,
No shoes on the bed.
right? Oh gosh, no, that would kill me. I can't. No, like eating like panchan, like kimchi, in our house was common with every single food. Like it doesn't matter what it is, and you know, kids that I grew up with in Florida didn't get that, but kids in college did. And so I was like, wow, like this is a more universal experience. I love this. And then to cap it all off, I got to study abroad in Seoul. So I was like really starting to embrace my culture at that point, and it just really opened my eyes to things that my parents used to do when I was a kid, and I never thought anything of it. And I was like, oh, this was because we're Korean. That's so cool. Like I loved making those connections, and I think it just became really natural for me when I decided to write and write a story completely from scratch from my own imagination, that I really wanted to explore more of my own culture within it. I just really love the idea of embracing it through story. And also myths in Korea are really cool. And like the mythical creatures in Korea are really cool. So like I was shocked that there were no stories about like the Gumiho or like the Dokkaebi or like that kind of stuff. So I wrote my own.
That that makes a lot of sense because we also have a lot of myths and folklore here in the Philippines, and I don't see them in mainstream media at all. So, yeah. Okay. So, speaking of going to Seoul and loving everything that you discovered there, so how did you research the books? Like, did you travel? Did you interview people? Did you read a lot of books? That sort of stuff.
So yeah, definitely part of it was travel. Just, I mean, starting from my own childhood, going back and forth to Korea. I know I was really privileged in the fact that my family was able to go visit Korea multiple times when I was still a kid. And then of course being able to study there. Um, and then once I actually came up with the idea for Gumiho Wicked Fox kind of when I was in Korea. I was visiting with my family, and I just kind of imagined like, what would it be like for like a mythical creature to live in this city? Because like there's a really great historic aspect to Seoul. Like it still has the old palace. It still has like hanuks, which are like historic old houses with the rice paper walls and the tiled roofs. But then it has some of the most advanced like technology in the world as well in that
Yes.
city. And it seems like such an interesting dichotomy to me. And I was like, I could see like a mythical creature from like old ancient Korea living in this city and kind of being like like keeping to like the things that it knows and having to adapt to like like Gangnam, which is like really really built up and really elaborate and like high skyscrapers and stuff. Like how would a Gumiho go to like a karaoke room in Gangnam? Like how would that look? So traveling gave me the inspiration, and also I decided to go back a couple of times after I came up with the book idea because I really wanted to incorporate places that I had spent significant time. But when you Korea has actually changed a lot since like the 90s, when I was a kid. So some places I remembered a certain way and I was like, I don't think they're the same, now. So I wanted to go back and I wanted to see what it was like now so that I could like incorporate it as a truly modern day example of Seoul. And so I really enjoyed that. Also, I used to say that like for research, I had to eat like all the food, but that was just for me. um, as far as
To be
books, I
fair,
did.
though, some of my favorite descriptions were the settings, like how you describe Seoul, and the food.
Oh, yay. Oh, good. I'm so happy because I definitely wanted that to come across. Like, I love Seoul and I love Korean culture so much. It's kind of like my love letter to my culture. And so, on the other side of that, when I couldn't be in Korea, some of the myths, like, I mean, you've read it, so you know that there's those short stories in between that are the myths. Um, some of those are based on real mythology. Some of them I made up. So just so people know, they're not all real, but a good chunk of them are. And even the ones that are based on true myths, I did want to kind of root them within Korean history. Like, and so I tried to look up like where did this myth originate from? Where did the characters from it originate from? And then when I figured that out, I did a lot of research about that era of Korea, just so that if I included any details, like, Joseon is very different than Shilla. So like, I really wanted to make sure that if I was putting in any information about it, that it was fairly accurate. Since I had to, like, the idea that these things actually happened to my characters who are like hundreds of years old, I had to root it in some kind of like actual historical accuracy. So I definitely did a lot of research, and for that I actually, what really helped, and if anyone wants a tip for this, I looked up curriculum from universities that do East Asian studies, and I looked up the reading and the type of things that they study, like at some of the universities here, at some of the universities in Seoul. And I purchased some of those books just to do some self-study. And I felt like that was just a really good jumping off point.
That's amazing. I never thought of like borrowing a college syllabus of a course I wanted to take just to get their reading list. That's wow. Okay, life hack.
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of the whole timeline bit, because one of my questions was about um, featuring your stories feature immortal or at least very, very old characters like Guyana and Junu, who have lived for hundreds of years.
Hmm.
So, um, like you said, they started off living in all these historical eras, and now they're here in modern day Korea. So, for people like that who have lived through world wars and seen technology change and evolve, how did you go about writing them in a way that was conscious of all the wisdom that they accumulated throughout the centuries, but still relatable to readers of today?
So I'll start with Yenna because she was easier because she's not a point of view character and she's a mother. So she kind of, I feel like when you're a mother figure, you're allowed to be wise and you don't have to explain it. Um, and Yenna's wisdom doesn't necessarily come across very motherly all the time,
Got
to be
it.
fair. She's kind of she was my character that I really wanted to play around with those types of paranormal creatures you see a lot in mainstream media, where like Dracula,
Oh
where they're
yeah.
like so, you know, they're so above mortals that they live and play by their own rules, and that's Yenna for sure. And I did want to unpack a little bit why she's like that. So like I won't give it away because it's a little bit of a spoiler for anyone watching, but the reason that I wanted to include her was both to be that like untouchable immortal and also to kind of unpack what makes an immortal character like that, right? Like what really happened in her hundreds of years living that made her see humanity this way. And so I really liked playing around with her. Uh, and I've had questions of people being like, would you ever write her story? And I would love to, but it's also so daunting because she is this character that like she's safest from a distance, like observe her from a distance. But when you try to get too close, it's so scary, and she's very she's not the safest person to be around. But I do love her. I love her a lot, and so Juno was a different story, and it was a little bit harder to unpack because um, chronologically it's not said, but Juno is technically older than Yenna.
What?
Yes, he was turned into a Dokkaebi at a time like that. The first Gumiho kind of existed. So um, he is older, but he is not necessarily
Not
wiser.
wiser at all.
He's not wiser at all. And it was so much harder because like, you know, I do think that there is kind of this uh problematic issue when it comes to young adult novels where a human falls in love with a paranormal creature because young
Yes.
adult age range where they're minors, you know, they're kids still. And the paranormal creatures lived for hundreds of years and there's that huge age gap, and we don't want to run into accidental like Lolita territory where we're saying that that's okay. We're not saying that's okay. um, so I had to grapple with that a little bit because I purposefully made it so that Myung was the actual age of
Teen.
Jihoon in Wicked Fox. I'm like, no, they're both teenagers. She was born just like him and everything, and I got away with it with not having to address that. But Junoo being a romantic lead in Dokkaebi Vicious Spirits, I had to finally address it. But I am so lucky because I have amazing writer friends and we nitpick everything about writing and storytelling. And we have so many theoretical conversations being like, what would it actually happen if like, you know, the meteor was coming to Earth? How do you actually think like humanity would react to that? We have lots of conversations like that. And we had a lot of conversations about like, well, what would it be like to live hundreds of years? Like, how would your brain develop? How would your personality evolve, right? And especially if you are immortal, stuck at an age like 19 or 20, right?
Yes.
So you never physically age. So the world treats you a certain way, even though your brain is
Wow.
still, you know, evolving and developing way past that, hundreds of years past that. And that's kind of where I landed with Juno, was that he isn't very mature and he's not very emotionally developed, which is which is because of his past, which we get into in Dokkaebi Vicious Spirits. He has developed a lot of wisdom, like in the fact that he knows things about the world. But I think there's a difference between, I won't call it wisdom with him. He's developed a lot of knowledge.
Yeah.
But
street
for him,
smart, perhaps.
Yeah, it hasn't developed into wisdom for Juno because of him being so emotionally stunted. You know, so like he knows a lot of things, but he doesn't use it the right way. And, you know, I think that that's where I kind of landed with him as a character. And it really helped me kind of explain why, in a lot of ways, some of the other characters in Vicious Spirits and Wicked Fox are actually smarter than Juno because he is so stunted in a lot of ways. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because he's someone who, like you said, he's stuck at this appearance of being 19 or 20, and you can get away with a lot if you look handsome and you're frozen at that age. And then
Yes.
he's stuck into this group of teenagers who have had to grow up really, really fast. And so they're more emotionally developed than he is. And even though he's hundreds of years older, now it's him who has to keep up.
Yes, 100%. Yes, that's totally true. Which I love because he's a person who hasn't ever had to play by someone else's rules for a very long time at this point. And for him to realize that these kids like know better than him in a lot of ways, he has to finally face things.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my God. I want to reread this with that in mind. So, which leads me to my next question. So, coming off of that, you know, you're immortal. You've lived hundreds of years. You've seen what? Thousands of girls. So, one of my questions, and I mentioned this in my review, was like, this is always tricky because why would an immortal person fall for a teenager? So my question is, what do you think makes Juno and Somin work as a couple, and also Jihoon and Myung?
Okay, I'll start with the easier one because that's
Okay.
Jihoon and Myung. Jihoon and Myung work as a couple because even though they're very different people, they've gone through a lot of very similar things. Myung's dad hasn't been in her life. Jihoon's parents abandoned him when he was young. They both have these issues with abandonment and issues with feeling that they're not loved. I mean, Jihoon is definitely loved by his Hamoni, his grandmother, but I think like the problem with him is that he doesn't think that that's enough. He thinks that, you know, because he doesn't have parental love, which everyone else around him, like all the other kids in school, they have parents. And so he's like, so what's wrong with me? And his reaction is to take nothing seriously. Because if you take nothing seriously, then nothing can hurt you. And so he goofs around and he jokes around a lot and he's really makes, you know, everything a game, and he loves video games and he doesn't get good grades. And that's his defense mechanism. And Myung's defense mechanism to feeling like she doesn't belong and isn't loved, even by her mother. Like her mother is constantly telling Myung that Myung's the most important thing in her life, but she never like truly shows affection for Myung. And
it's got to kind of mess up the wires in your head a bit.
Yeah. And you know, and then also the fact that Myung has never been in a place long enough to be able to make other connections with her peers, like to have friends, that really messed with her too. And she just doesn't think that she's worthy of love either, the same way Jihoon doesn't think he is. But her reaction to it is to recede into herself and to push everyone away and to have these shields up. I mean, granted, to be fair to Myung, she has the added thing of like she has to kill people to survive.
So she doesn't want to get
like
attached to people.
Yeah. So like I don't think anyone should technically blame her for that, but their root of their problem is pretty much the same thing. They just react to it very differently. And I think that when they finally get to the place where they can recognize that in each other, kind of like kindred souls, they realize like other people go through this too. Maybe I'm not so different. Maybe there's someone in this world who can understand me and who I can talk to about this. And I feel like that definitely is something that I got from my teenage years, because like I was saying, like there weren't a lot of Asian people in Central Florida, so I just like didn't think anyone understood like what it was to be Asian. And like, unfortunately I dealt with a lot of like microaggressions and racism, and I didn't think there was anyone I could really talk to about it. And like my sister went away to boarding school like early, so I didn't have her for a while. So until I went to college and I found these kindred spirits. And so that's kind of like the feeling that I kind of wanted to give to Jihoon and Myung when they finally find each other. And I think that's the spark. But the thing that makes them work truly as a couple is that Jihoon is like really thoughtful of Myung's needs. Like he really does care about her as a whole. He's not just like, she's a pretty girl. He's not like just like, I want a girlfriend. He's like, all of Myung matters to him. And that was really important for me to do, because I do think that there has been some instances where young adult heroes and male love interests have been presented as like mean and cruel, and then that's supposed to be attractive. And I don't like that, because I mean, it's fine if you know that that's just fiction, but the problem is that so many books for so long presented that as the ideal, right?
Yes.
As the unavailable, like, I'm mean to you, but it's because I love you, so that's an explanation for it. It's like, nah.
Yeah, I
there's
want to
never an
protect you. I
explanation
just
for
can't
being mean.
express myself.
Yeah, like I'm so repressed, but like I truly love you on the inside. Just crack through my walls. But so like Jihoon's a cinnamon roll, like, and I wanted a male love interest who was sweet and kind and caring and loving. And I think Myung does really, really, really care about people, but she just can't show it. And I think when they both realize that they both have such giving hearts, like they kind of synced up in a really nice, like two puzzle pieces, like meshing together kind of a way. And I really loved them for that. Like I really wanted that for them. Juno and Somin was harder.
Yes.
The reason they were harder was because they came about as completely independent people who I built just for themselves. I never, like, when I was thinking of what makes Jihoon, what makes Myung, I wanted them to be independent people, but I also knew that they would end up together.
Yes.
So it was like, what is it about Jihoon that Myung would connect with them, and vice versa? Whereas when I was first building Somin and Juno in Wicked Fox, I hadn't necessarily thought of them together yet. So I built them as completely independent people, and then I had to, after the fact, think of, how would these two people fit together? And so the thing is that originally I did try a bunch of different secondary pairs together in my mind. I was like, what if Jihoon was with this person? What if someone was with this person? Like, I really did imagine different possibilities, because I didn't want to limit myself to like these two being together. And then if it didn't work, if it didn't look good, then I would be forcing it, right?
Yeah.
But it came about that the one big thing, and you kind of mentioned it, was Junu's lived for hundreds of years. He's been with people, a bunch of people, throughout the centuries. Why is Somin special? And I figured out the answer to that in trying him with other people, is that I needed someone who was so independent and so strong, and who would so readily put Juno in his place that he couldn't BS them, right? He couldn't bluff his way out. He couldn't like be charming and get away with stuff. It needed to be someone who could meet him head on and see through all of his fake, smooth, charming talk, and make him have to reckon with the things that he refused to see himself. And that's Somin in a nutshell. Like she wouldn't give up on Jihoon. Like Jihoon was like, let me be a failure. Let me like be lazy. And she, in 18 years, didn't give up on him. And someone like that, who's that loyal and that strong-willed and that brave, is the perfect person to make an immortal Dokkaebi face the ghost of his past. So I really did think that like the relationship in Wicked Fox is like a sweet, kind first love kind of a relationship, and then Vicious Spirits is like a I will batter you until you tell me the truth because I love you kind of a relationship.
I actually really love those two more because the enemies to lovers trope is just it for me. I loved Jihoon and Myeong because they're it was a slow burn kind of thing, but also this was very much um, like a flame that just wasn't there, and then it was like completely unignorable and undeniable. So um, in line with that, uh, my next question is one thing I noticed between the two books was that Wicked Fox spanned several months in the story, while Vicious Spirits was told over only 6 days approximately. So that's got to be super different in the writing process. So, what was the difference in writing for two timelines like those?
So, people kind of say if you look at an author's next book, it's kind of a response to the book that they previously wrote in a lot of ways. And Vicious Spirits is definitely a response to Wicked Fox. You pointed out, obviously, that the relationships are super different, and that was because I wanted to write something really different. Like, I loved writing the relationship with Wicked Fox. If I had written the same type of relationship in Vicious Spirits, I would have been so bored. So I wanted to have like a hot flash, giant flame, can this last kind of a relationship in Vicious Spirits. Um, and the same thing is that in Wicked Fox, I definitely based a lot of the timeline on some of my favorite K-dramas, which are, if you really think about it, a lot of K-dramas, not all of them, but a lot of them take place over months, and a lot of them take place over 3 months. I don't know if anyone notices that, but like 3 months seems to be like a weirdly magical number in K-dramas. But then there's also the fact that a lot of them do love to play with the mid-season time jump, which,
Oh, okay.
I kind of, some of the classics, Boys Over Flowers, they jump a year ahead in mid-season. Innocent Man with Song Joong-ki jumps ahead like about a year in the middle. Like a lot of them do these little time jumps, and I kind of loved the idea of playing around with who are these two characters together and who are these two characters when they think they've lost each other. And so
Yeah.
I put a little time jump in Wicked Fox. It was risky. I don't know if it works. I think it works for what I am trying to do, but it was really hard. I mean, when I was revising with my editor, she had so many questions and she wanted to make sure I was covering all my bases. And that's the thing that I struggled with the most. So then when it came to Vicious Spirits, I was like, it will be very short. They will have to get everything done very quickly, and there will be no time jump. Like, I don't want to have them like be like, okay, I'm just biding my time, because I think that was an issue that I had with Wicked Fox. Was like there's a period of time where they have to wait like a month until the next full moon in Wicked Fox, and I was like, how do I write that? And I cheated by being like, okay, it's a month later, but it was a struggle. So for Vicious Spirits, I didn't want those things where the kids are just standing around a lot and just like living a normal life. I wanted it to be like, this is an urgent thing. We've got to get it fixed immediately. And so that's why I came up with the timeline of like about a week. They have a week to figure this out, or else a person they care about could die. And that, yeah, and it was pretty much just a response to the pain that my revisions for Wicked Fox were. I'm not gonna lie, that's really what it was. But I liked it too, just because um, it felt like Juno and Soman are the type of characters who need to get things done. They're like a let's go kind of characters, and so that kind of a shorter timeline really seemed to fit for their points of view anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Oh my God, I have so many thoughts on everything you just said. The only K drama that I've watched is Descendants of the Sun. And that's,
Okay.
yeah, and that's because my parents are soldiers and my mom is medical corps. So,
Oh,
it,
wow.
yeah,
It's like
so
made for you.
yes. So everyone was like, you have to watch it. This is you. So I'm like, okay. So yeah, and
Th-
there was, yeah,
There was a mini time jump, but like
yeah,
after like 2 episodes, that was when the time jump happened.
yeah, right. Like, the two main characters tried to date and then it didn't work out, and then they just met months later. And then
Yeah.
there was another towards the end that was kind of spoilery. Yeah.
Yeah. We won't talk about that one because that's a
Okay.
really good show. People should
Okay.
definitely watch it. But
Yeah.
like it does give you the same thing because, like you said, those characters date in the first 2 episodes and then they decide it won't work out. And then they don't see each other for months again. And they do see each other. And that gives you the whole, like, what were they like together? And what are
And
they like now that they've been brought back together after breaking up? Like, that's the fun story.
yeah, that's amazing. Because I read a lot of YA when I was a teenager. And my issue when I step back from how much I love the story is that this happened over a bunch of weeks. Do you really fall that much in love over a matter of weeks? And then, like next year, you'll be a completely different person. Are you sure this is still who you are and who you want? So,
Mhm.
what I appreciated about Descendants of the Sun was like they spent time apart and they
Mhm.
grew into people in their own fields and they came together and realized, oh, I actually still like you. And the
Yeah.
person that I am now, after I've grown that much, is a better fit to the person you are. So
Hmm.
I didn't think of that in the sense of like wicked foxes like this. But now that you say it, I'm like, oh yeah, that I think their time apart really did work because they weren't subject to the whole um, flash in the pan. Is this real? Is Are you who I want next year? Kind of question. So
Yeah.
yeah, and there was they are two people dealing with abandonment issues, and then they felt abandoned by each other.
Hmm.
So and then they have to overcome that, and the way you did it was just like amazing. So
Oh, thank you.
so at least I know that they will last because they faced the thing that they were most afraid of with each other and they still managed to make it work.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh my god. Okay. That was so meaty. Um I would love to ask more, but I have to move on to the next thing, which is which are the scenes that you loved writing versus scenes that were more difficult or challenging to write?
So, I'll do the bad first.
Okay.
Scenes that are really difficult for me to write are action scenes, and I actually think a lot of my friends would say the same thing. It's really hard because you have so many moving parts, right? And it's not the same as like in a movie where you have the visuals and you're like, that's so cool, that like move that they did, because you could see it happening. It's like if I tried to describe the same cool move that you saw in your favorite action movie, it would be me a lot being like, and then he spun around and then his leg came up and then he like blah, blah, blah. It's just really boring. So figuring out what is important to say in an action scene, what's important to show, is really hard. And then the great thing about books, but also kind of a difficult thing, is that you're in the character's mind, so you get kind of like a more insight into why they're doing what they're doing, and so you're trying to incorporate that right in the scene that's like fast paced, high tension. But if you spend too much time in their mind in what they're thinking, then the pace slows down.
Yeah.
So it's a big balancing act, and it's really hard to get right. And also the fact that you don't want every action scene to sound like each other. So you're like, this one should be unique from the one that happens at the end, but then you're like trying to figure out how to like do that and also make it interesting. It's so hard. It's really, really hard. And originally, most of my action scenes in Wicked Fox were like half the size they are now, because I was like, just get it over with, just get it over with. And my editor was like, no, you got to spend a little bit more time, or else what happens afterwards doesn't feel as earned. And I was like, fine. So I had to like add all this extra stuff to it. So that's really hard to this day for me to write, is action scenes. But the scenes
You
I
still crushed
love.
my heart with a bunch of your more violent, heartrending scenes. So they work.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I'm glad that they're still interesting. Um, yeah, the scenes that I love writing are the ones where the characters are like feeling so many emotions that they can't keep them in. It's like, and then second to that are the ones where they're repressing their emotions and being all angsty. So like being the angsty ones are really fun to write, but they also kind of get frustrating because you get mad at your own characters. You're like, why are you like this? But they're really fun. And then but the ones where they're so overwhelmed that finally it comes flooding out, and then the other character is like, oh my god, I have to fix this for you. Those are really fun because you kind of learn a lot about your characters. I think that when I couldn't figure out Myung for the longest time when I was first drafting Wicked Fox, and the first time I really figured her out was when she was in a moment of crisis and had to react to it. And how she reacted to it, I was like, oh yes, this is who she really is on the inside. And it really did help me. So those times where like the character can't hide who they truly are so fun. And then my third favorite, or not even, this isn't ranked, but another of my favorite scenes to write is kissing scenes. I honestly, like, I didn't set out to write romances necessarily, but I love writing kissing scenes, and
They are
I
very
think
sweet.
and there's so many different ways to like express your emotions with a kiss, and I do think that like the way I see it isn't necessarily just the physical of it. It's not just like I want to kiss you, so I'm going to kiss you. Like sometimes, like if it's like a soft, gentle, comforting moment, or if it's like I'm so mad, I'm just going to kiss you. So there's so many different ways to explore a person's feelings in a kissing scene, and I really do love those.
I enjoyed reading them. So I would also say that those, along with the violent ones, really do work.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Um, okay. Next question is inspired by Reddit. What's something about the books that you wish you could talk about more, but are just never asked about?
Oh my goodness. This is, I mean, the kissing scenes? No. um, that people have really delved into like what the books are about, which I really appreciate. You know what? I do kind of wish people asked me a little bit more about some of the Easter eggs that I put in from Korean pop culture, because
Ooh.
I'm such a fan of obviously K-dramas, but I'm such a fan of like K-pop and you know, fashion and all that stuff that comes out of Korea. And so I try to put like little nuggets in there for like, if you don't know it, it doesn't ruin the book for you, but like if you do know it, like I'm hoping that it's like an added bonus. So I put in a lot of nods to some of my favorite K-pop groups or my favorite songs in there. And because they're Easter eggs, I understand why people aren't asking about it. But like sometimes I'm like, hey, what did you think of that moment? Wasn't that cool?
Oh my God. Can you give us one? Just for the less eagle-eyed of us.
Sure. Okay. Well, this people. I mean, these are just like the names of K-pop stars, but Miyoung's favorite K-pop star is IU, and I love her. I think she's pretty timeless. I was thinking like, oh, should I not name people who are big now because that will date the book?
Yeah.
But I feel like IU's timeless. And then at one moment, Somin mentions Rain, who's a big K-pop star from when I was younger, and then
Yeah.
Top, or T.O.P. From Big Bang. But the one that's the biggest Easter egg, and honestly, I don't expect people to get this because it's really, really, really vague. But Junu's dog is named after a K-pop star. So his dog is named Dubu. And the leader of SHINee has a nickname. Everyone calls him Dubu Onu because he's so soft and he's so soft like tofu. So I love SHINee and I adore their music. I adore all the members. And so I named Junu's dog Dubu after Onu. from Shiny.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I think the only one I spotted is obviously my girlfriend is a Gumiho.
Oh
And
yes,
yeah,
she
because
does reference that.
yeah, because that was referenced in the afternoon dramas that they watch on TV. And
Yeah.
Ari from League of Legends, which I only know because I play League of Legends.
I felt like if I didn't mention Ari, I would get a lot of people being like, "Why didn't you mention her?" Because like Jihoon loves League
Because
of Legends, like, why wouldn't he mention Ari?
I was just like, why doesn't she just say Ari's name? Is this a copyright thing? Is it a copyright thing?
I don't think so. I'm allowed to say League of Legends in the book, so I think I don't think so. I hope not. Like
I got super excited because my boyfriend plays. He's a much better player than I am. And then I was reading it and I was like, oh my god, it's Ari! It's Ari!
yeah, no, that's definitely. I would be remiss. My girlfriend is a Gumiho and Ari are like the two top Gumiho results when you Google it. So like if I didn't mention them, then I'd be a bad Korean.
It's amazing. Okay, so quick segue. Can you tell us more about the story of your cover art?
Oh yes! Oh my gosh! So I love my cover artist. Actually, okay. So let me grab a book from this little bookshelf. Ooh, okay. So this is the obviously the cover for Wicked Fox. The cover artist is Miranda Meeks, and she's absolutely amazing. And you know, we went back and forth a lot. At first, we were only going to have Miyoung on the cover, and we're going to have her just be bold, face forward, with her tails around her and the moon behind her. But Jihoon is a point of view character, and so they surprised me by saying they would add him too. And and I love how they kind of like captured their faces. And I also love that it's illustrated and that it kind of gives me a little bit of like manga anime vibes a little bit, because those are also
Uniform,
stories that,
definitely.
yeah, like those are stories that have definitely inspired me. Grew up watching anime my whole life. And then the one thing that I really fought for was for her to have her tail. I don't know if people can see it, but it's there faintly on the bottom. I just wanted like the foxy part of her to be symbolized on the cover. And then another thing that they did, which I was not expecting and I absolutely loved, was that they put the actual hangul of her name on her name tag, which is a thing in Korea that we have. Oh, let me see if I can do it close. In Korea, they have name tags on their uniforms with their names on it. So I really loved that, because I'm not 100% certain, like I haven't looked at the whole catalog of US published young adult books, but I'm fairly certain that Hangul has almost never been on the cover of a young adult book. Don't
No,
quote me on that though.
I don't think so. Don't
So
quote me on that either, but I've read it a lot and I've never seen it.
so that was like really exciting. And then we have Vicious Spirits, who are obviously my other characters. And this is a different artist, actually. It's Valentina Reminar. I hope I said that name right. It's all on my website if people want to look them up, because they're both amazing artists. But this is obviously Somin and Juno. And everything you see in the background are things that I had suggested for Wicked Fox. I suggested the cityscape of Seoul. I suggested the faint outline of a fox. I suggested all of this stuff. And they were like, there's so much options for Wicked Fox, but they really decided to go with the forest moon imagery. And so when they showed me this, they didn't tell me they were doing it. They showed me this. I was like, it's everything I asked for. So I'm so happy. And then again, we have the hangul on it, which is even bigger this time. And then the story with this sign right here, this is kalguksu amason, which is kalguksu is like handmade noodles and soup. It's actually a sign from my sister's favorite restaurant when she went to university in Seoul. And it's right by the school we went to. We both went to Iwa Women's University. And we loved it, and it had the best sundubu, and it unfortunately closed. And I was so sad when I found out. And so when they said I could decide what the sign on the restaurant said, I was like, Amazon, it has to be Amazon. It's like such a great tribute to this place that kept my sister and me fed when we were abroad.
Did you
So
ever tell the owners that you put their sign on a book cover?
I never knew them personally enough to have their contact. So no, but like if they ever see this, if you own a restaurant called Almasong close to Ewha University like 10 years ago, then I loved your I loved your food. Yeah, so I was very happy I got to include that.
Covers are very beautiful, but I did also notice straight off that they were like two different styles. So it's interesting to me to find out why that was. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't always know what goes on in the design things in the back, behind the scenes at publishers, but I think that because it's technically considered a companion novel, I mean, it is a sequel, but it's also a companion novel because it's two different characters. I think that's kind of why they decided to go with slightly different art to be like, it's different but connected. I don't know. That's my theory.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about what it's like being a writer of your books. So, what's a day in the life of Katcho, the writer? So, do you have any rituals or routines when you write?
I think the only main ritual I have is I have to have a drink. It could be just water, but I have to have something next to me that I can just sip on when I'm like pondering my manuscript. And usually it's coffee though, and which is bad because I'm actually trying to drink decaf now because I'm so reliant on caffeine. But I really like to have a drink next to me. And then one practice that I have that really does help me creatively is that before I start writing anything, I'll reread a little bit of my own writing for that manuscript. And part of that is because I want to kind of get in the mood of like this story. I want to pick up the voice again that I was using for this story, especially when you're under contract. If you're writing more than one book at a time, you kind of get jumbled in your own head. But part of it is also just for my own benefit of like remembering what I like about writing. Like I think that sometimes we get really caught up in the process, and sometimes, especially when you're like under contract and you have deadlines, you're just writing to get it done because you want to turn it in. But remembering why you love the process of writing and why you love writing is really, really important for a creative. And I do enjoy my own writing. I'm not so humble that I wouldn't say that. Like I started writing for myself, like, and a lot of the books and the things that I write in my book are things that I wish I had as a teenager, as a kid. So I go back and I reread passages that I really enjoyed writing and that I really like still, and it gets me in the mood and it makes me happy. And then then everything else is up in the air. I could write on my bed, I could write on the couch, I could write at my desk or in a cafe, but not now, not currently in a cafe.
Not currently.
But everything else is, I do have soundtracks, I do have playlists for each of my manuscripts, but those, I actually develop those slowly as I'm drafting. So in the beginning stages, I don't listen to anything consistent. Yeah.
Okay, I will loop back to that later. Emily, two big questions left before we move on to like the closing bit. So question from my League of Legends playing boyfriend. Everyone always asks about the book, but how are you? How has your life changed since you became an author?
Aw, he's so nice. That's such a nice question.
I asked him over lunch. I said, I'm interviewing the author of this book, etc., etc. What? Give me some question ideas. And he said, ask her, how are you? I was like, what? And he explained. I was like, that's actually pretty good. I'm taking that.
It's such a thoughtful question. I'm not usually asked that in interviews, so I really appreciate it. My life completely changed when I published, when I got the book deal and when I published the book, and not in like a huge way of like it became a breakout and now I can live in my mansion. Nothing like that. It's more like writing has always been a passion of mine that for a long time I had put in the hobby category. Like, this is my hobby and I do it for fun and I share it with friends and they enjoy it and that's all I need to make me feel happy. And I had a very fulfilling career in medicine, but going back to the, Asian parent expectations.
Oh my God, did you go to med school?
I did not. I got my master's in public health and I worked in cancer research, which was very different.
Oh my God, I'm a registered nurse.
Oh, yay!
Oh my God. Yay.
I mean, healthcare is important. I mean, oh gosh, can't even get into that. The United States is very backwards. But anyway, but yeah, so I never thought it would be a profession, writing. I never
Same.
thought that I would get published with a publisher who had the ability to send my books to like other countries. Like, that's so weird and baffling to me that this is what I do now for a living. And I'm so grateful for it. And a lot of the friends and community that I have now is from this, like, if not directly from publishing, then tangentially from it. People I've met through other authors and things like that. And writing has opened up my view of the world. It really, well, first of all, like, gave me a reason to really do a lot more research into my heritage and my identity. And I don't think I would have done it as much if not for writing. And so there's so much about my Korean identity that has evolved and changed and deepened in the past, 5, 6, what year is it? Like 6 or 7 years, that I've been like writing for publication in order to get published. And then on top of that, the writing community and the reading community, the book community is so diverse in way more ways than just like race or any of that. It's so many different types of people and intersectionalities, and I learn from them every day. And I truly think that I've become a better person because of it. Like, I wouldn't go so far as to be like, I'm the best version of myself. I think we're always changing and evolving, but I do think that, like, looking at who I was and what I knew 5 years ago and who I am now, I feel like I've developed better and I have a better idea of like what people are talking about when they discuss their experiences. And that's been so amazing and so invaluable. And I owe it all to my books, and not my books, but like to books and writing. So it's been great. It's been great writing and publishing. I wouldn't give it up for anything. It's the best community. It's the best place to be. And I'm doing well. You could tell your boyfriend that I'm doing good.
I will tell him, but we are very happy to hear that you're doing really, really well, and we're really, really happy for you. Okay, so jumping off that bit of writing, opening you to the world and seeing what impact the world can make on you. My last question for the interview proper is, we all hope that our writing will affect change in the people who read our words. So what changes do you hope, or what impact do you hope to make in your readers with your books?
I really want people to kind of see my culture as something that is both unique and beautiful and interesting, but also is something accessible and not something so foreign that it's othered. I think that in the United States and in the Western world, a lot of times Asian cultures are very much seen as foreign. They're othered a lot, and you see it in movies. You see it like, oh, we need an exotic location for this sci-fi film. Let's go to China. Like, it happens so much. And the things that we experience a lot, especially that I've experienced growing up diaspora in the United States, is that my experience as an American is very much, it's not taken as seriously because of the Asian part of it. It's the Asian part of Asian American that makes them be like, okay, well, your experience is not normal, is not the norm. So like, you're not as American or something like that. I mean, not everyone says that, but some people say that to me. And this is my country. I was born and raised here, so I am American. And so I'm hoping that like by discussing my culture and celebrating it and showing how beautiful it can be, that people kind of get to know it more and get less like afraid of it. I mean, I don't even know why they do what they try to other us, but they definitely do it. And like, and I also think that, you know, the more that people can experience and see each other's lived experiences and identities, the more empathetic they can get, and, you know, just a more rounded, better person they can be. And so, yeah, I wrote these 2 books that are about teenagers, Korean teenagers living in Korea, but, you know, I have other books where I'm going to write about Korean American teenagers living in the United States, or like Korean American teenagers going abroad, or, a fantasy world that's like inspired by my culture or inspired by not my culture, but the people in it happen to be Korean. Like, you know, and I think that with every book that I write, I just want it to just be more and more normalized, that people who look like me can be the heroes of our own stories, and that we're worth being your friends and your confidants and your love interests and your heroes. And we don't fit into easy slots. You know, no one does. And that's what I hope that people take away from my books.
That's really beautiful. And I do hope to see that happen more. We have a lot of diverse voices in the YA community now. So I'm super grateful to see more people who look like me on the covers and the pages of books. So thank you to you and to everyone who is in this line of work. So,
thank you.
Okay, so that's it from my questions, but we have a few from the Fully Booked Bookworm community. So these are just less deep, briefer questions. Okay, so first question from AV Marielle of the Fully Booked Bookworm Corner. Why did you choose the storyline of the Gumiho out of all the other mythical creatures from Korea?
I feel like the Gumiho is probably the most famous one. It's most well known, and I really loved the fact, well, I hated the fact that Gumiho are mostly women and Gumiho are evil. I was
Are
like,
there
why?
male
Why did
Gumiho?
she? What?
Are there male Gumiho?
There's some K-dramas where they're men, but in most of the like traditional myths, like if you like read the like old folk tales, they're almost always women. There's like one that I could find where it was a male, and it was kind of like I think it was more Chinese, of a Chinese tale. So it was like, well, why are they always women? Why are they always evil? Like, it's not her fault that she's hot. Like, that's so unfair. And a lot of them is like she's trying to like find someone to love. Like she wants to get married, and then they're like, no, I'm gonna stab you, you're a fox. So it really bothered me. And I was like, I need to unpack this. I have so many feelings about this. This is not fair. And then on the flip side of that, I was like, yeah, female paranormal creatures, we need more of that in YA. We need it. I really wanted a relationship where the more powerful character that could kill the other one was female. Yeah.
That's amazing, because like, yeah, you're magical, but why does that automatically equate to being evil? So amazing. Okay, thank you. At unmasked_gold is curious. Are you interested in creating a book series making use of another mythological creature?
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, like I said before, like there's so many cool creatures in Korean mythology and like Asian mythology at all, but like, yeah, definitely, even just focusing on Korean mythology, I think like there's so many cool creatures. There are cool gods and deities. Like the way that we treat our gods is very different than in the Western world. And I just love that. And not even just that, like the way we treat anyone who's magical, like shamans or, you know, Taoists, and like I guess we could call them magicians. I can't really translate it very well, but like, yeah, there's like really cool stories that I think can be developed and evolved into like fitting like a bigger fantasy world. And I have a story that I can't talk about too much, but it's definitely based on Korean mythology, and it's a different take. So I'm really excited about that
Guys,
one.
we have more books from Kacho coming. Oh my god, I'm so excited. Okay. Kisalala asks, I know we said that you did the whole dinosaur time travel thing at 9, but what was the actual age that you started writing?
When I was younger than that, I mean, that was my first very much I'm proud of this book kind of book. It was so epic. Like there were chase scenes, and we were back in the Jurassic age, so like we had to build like houses and stuff, but that's beside the point. Um, the first book I can remember writing was with my sister, and I was young, and I loved this picture book. These picture books called Baby Unicorn, and then the second book was called Baby Unicorn and Baby Dragon. And I love them so much. And then they ended, and I was so sad. And I was like, what happened to the Baby Unicorn and the Baby Dragon? And so my sister helped me write a sequel of my own, and I, drew out the unicorn and the dragon, and she helped me write the story, and we like made it a little binding, and we stapled it, and it was a little book. And that's the first book. That's the first book I can remember writing. I was maybe 5 or 6.
That's so cool. Oh my god, you were writing fanfic at 6.
I was.
Okay. From Simply Hannah 08, what is your favorite book to read every day?
Oh my gosh. That's so hard to answer. I'll just give some books that I think that I've read over and over again, like I've read multiple times. The Daughter, Smoke and Bone trilogy by Laini
Oh my god,
Taylor.
yes, I love that.
Love it. And like it's so good with every reread. Like all the emotions that you get, like it's so good.
And her writing is just so poetic.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. I really love that one. An adult book that I've read multiple times is The Time Traveler's Wife. I know it became a movie, but the movie doesn't even touch how great the book is. It's definitely an adult novel, but it's so cleverly done and so interesting. I mean, she pretty much takes the concept of a person who can time travel, and he doesn't choose to time travel. It's like a genetic thing, and like kind of makes it really realistic, like how he would deal with that, how his family deals with it. And there's just the most beautiful love story in it. I read that book whenever I have a book hangover. Like if I read a series and then I'm like feeling all my emotions and I feel like so angsty, I'll actually read The Time Traveler's Wife. And it's interesting because that book makes me feel so many things, but I think because it's so familiar to me as a story at this point that like it's like, okay, I know these feelings, I know how to deal with these feelings. So I really like that one. And then a recent one that I've actually just finished rereading, and I think that the reread like really just gave me so much more insight into the book, was There Will Come a Darkness by Katie Rose Poole. It's the first book in a trilogy. The second one is out now. But it's such a huge world. It's such a huge fantasy world. And so it's definitely one of those books where like every time you read it, you notice something different, which I always love about books. And that's usually why I reread books, is because there's so much more to discover and explore in them. So I really love that one.
Okay, I will look into that. But the first two, oh my god, yes, totally recommend rereading those as well. And then we have Patrick Daka, who would like to know, are you a fan of Blackpink?
Yes, I went to their concert. They did a Blackpink World Tour like a year and a half, 2 years ago, and they were in the New York area. So I went to that concert. It was so fun. I love them. I know that like they're kind of breaking into the US market, not as big as BTS obviously, but like I think that people should definitely check them out. They're so amazing and talented, and yeah.
Yeah. I don't even want to get into the whole BTS US mainstream music thing. That's a whole different conversation. But yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So for the last portion of our interview, we're going to do fast talk questions. So I'm just going to like dish out the questions, and You can answer them in word or phrase responses only. Okay.
Oh gosh.
So
Okay.
3, 2, 1, go. Favorite authors?
Laini Taylor, Renee Adier, Marie Lu, and Holly Black.
Okay. Favorite place to write? Although we talked about this.
I love writing in cafes. I miss
Okay.
it so much.
Okay. Favorite hype music?
Oh, hype music? Big Bang.
Favorite fiction tropes?
Friends to lovers. I really love that. And fake dating. I love fake dating. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Favorite thing to use as a bookmark?
Just literally anything. I like receipts, business cards, anything.
Favorite blogger or artist?
Favorite who?
Favorite blogger or artist?
Oh, blogger. Oh, that's hard. I don't know. I'm so bad at this. I haven't like read a lot of blogs recently, which I feel really bad about.
You can cheat and say hours.
Oh, yes. No. Okay. I'll say yours. Yes.
Okay. This or that? Paperback or hardcover?
Paperback.
This or that? Bookmark or dog ear?
Bookmark. Oh God, dog, no.
Read all day or write all day?
So hard. That's mean. Read all day. It's easier on my brain.
Okay, yeah, yes. Read one book at a time or multiple books at the same time?
I read multiple books.
Write in a journal or write on the computer?
I wish I could say journal, but I'm just better at writing on computer.
Okay. Nighttime or daytime?
Nighttime. I'm a vampire.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Physical book or ebook?
Physical book.
Happy endings or sad endings?
Happy. I like happy endings.
Okay, and lastly, the fully booked signature question. Do you judge books by their cover?
No, but I will buy a book based on its, I'll be more likely to buy it based on its cover. Like purchase it with my money.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Kat. Thank you for your time. So this is the end of our interview. So I hope you enjoyed as much as I do. And I personally know that I can't wait to read more of your stories.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This has been a really fun conversation.
Oh,
And hello, I'm back. Thank you,
Hi.
Reina, and thank you, Kat. I had fun watching the interview.
I'm sorry it ran like 10 minutes.
No, it's super fun. And to everyone who joined us today, thank you very much. And we hope that you enjoyed the conversation too. So get your own copies now of Wicked Fox and Vicious Spirits at www.fullybookedonline.com. So just click the link we have shared in the comment section. Thank you again and enjoy the rest of the day. Bye.
Thank you.